Hi everyone, Editor Dorkus here. You'll hear this a bit later on in the episode, but I wanted to say it up front as well. Kitta and I have decided not to move forward with the diagram format for Ascension Unleashed. We're still looking at ideas for innovating what we do with Ascension Unleashed, but for the time being, we didn't feel that the benefits of this new format were worth the effort.
We are recording.
We are recording.
Start. You actually haven't said start in a long time.
Start.
There you go.
So, I have enough egg on my face this week to make a whole omelet, I think.
All right.
Yep. So, first off, it finally dawned on me why my deepness linguistic theory holds no water or weight or whatever the turn of phrase is.
Mm-hmm.
If Quan and Alendi both referenced the deepness in their respective journals, it's like,
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Yup.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Why didn't we notice that?
Yeah.
Neither of us did. Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
I'm sure when that episode airs, I'll get a lot of flack for it.
as we should. Say I'll. Both of us. Because we both don't. We both are like, I think I was so excited when you said it as well.
Yeah.
So I thought it was great, and then people were like, they'll just knock. That. Oh well, the chat will be fun. Mm.
Yeah. And shoot, there was one other thing. And then, of course, the even eggier egg on my face. I think it was last episode when I so proudly declared that Sanderson is trolling us and we would never get anything of substance out of Quan other than, oh, I was so wrong. How did I not see it?
Okay, I feel like the egg's also on my face because I agreed with all of these things. Okay, well, that's double the omelets, I suppose.
Well, at least there's a lot of protein. I had a reflection from last chapter, as I so often tend to do.
Mm-hmm.
A big part of that chapter invoked Tyndwell's conversation with Elend about Vin
Mm-hmm.
regarding how a woman's sense of self-worth is not connected to their competence.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, and it ends up being prominent in this chapter. I think a man's sense of self-worth frequently is directly tied to their sense of competence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very much reflected in this chapter because
I
I
can't wait
spent
to
so much.
discuss that part. Oh my goodness.
Me
Yeah.
too, because I spent so much time last chapter very confident that Elend was going to take the perspective, I have been treating her like the knife. And
Yes, I was absolutely with you. Yeah.
yeah, and I was expecting that this chapter, but no, in this chapter, he is still very much the I'm not worthy of her, she's amazing mindset.
Yeah. That was a surprise to me. That was a big surprise.
Outside of that, we get some incredible Quan revelations.
Mm-hmm. Finally, although we didn't think they were gonna happen
Yep.
at all.
Yeah. And then we get that Elend introspection.
Mm-hmm.
So, hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. For this particular series, I am joined by my wonderful co-host, that darn Kitty.
Dorkus and I are both going into the story completely new, with almost no knowledge of the story or world.
Each segment, we intend to cover what happens in each new chapter and discuss our experience along the way.
Hold on to your butts, because this is Ascension Unleashed, a blind read-through. And today we will be covering Chapter 41!
Chapter 41! After that, I began to see other problems. Look, this far in, my suspicion of trolling is maintained.
Yeah, with this. Like, okay, thanks. What's the comment here? Okay.
I don't know what else there is to say about it, to be honest.
Like, I think, yeah, okay, cool. You know what? The chapter itself gives us a lot more, obviously. So that he was just this is just a formality. He just gave
Yeah,
us a thing. So that we get really into they are basically reading out loud the rubbing booking metal sheet thing. And I love their discussion about it afterwards.
so much, and I have so many thoughts about it that we'll get
Mhm.
into. But for the time being, this first paragraph is nothing we haven't heard before.
Mhm.
I write this record now, pounding it into a metal slab because I'm afraid. Afraid for myself, yes. I admit to being human. If Alendi does return from the Well of Ascension, I am certain that my death will be one of his first objectives. He is not an evil man, but he is a ruthless one. That is, I think, a product of what he has been through.
That fits with what we know of Alendi from the logbook, assuming that Alendi is that book's author.
It's a very safe assumption, I think. The logbook even speaks of Kwan and the falling out they had.
Yeah. Are we in agreement with them here? I think so.
Yes, I have a theory. We're
Uh-oh.
gonna get to it later
Okay.
regarding whether or not people are who they say they are. But
Okay.
for the time being,
Ah.
I think it is fair to say that the book, the logbook,
Mhm.
and the metal sheet are in reference to each other.
Yes, they validate each other. They give and they do refer to each other. So, yeah. We agree. So that is a fact that we hold dear. And I don't feel like this is repetitive stuff. It's no that we need to see them going through these assumptions and things like that. We need to see them doing this thinking.
Yes, and it is at this point that I begin to hope very much that we get some new information
Mhm.
finally. And it does make sense that it would come from a group study sesh.
Yeah, and a discussion, so giving us, the audience, information from that, not just having the logbook. Because remember, I was saying, like, having the sheet sorry, speaking about the sheet, that if there was this big revelation about it, we would have had it, we would have come up with it.
Unless Sawzed
Y
couldn't, but he needs to bounce the ideas off of Tindwell, and
yeah,
it's really well done in that way.
yeah. So, yeah, that's what we've gotten. So what I love that. I love that, we the whole way through, we try to figure out what Brandon Sanderson is gonna do, and then he does stuff and we're just like, "Yay!" And we just enjoy whatever the hell he does.
Yeah. I think Sanderson has said he loves writing information plots. He loves
Mhm.
science and studying science and reading about people studying science and writing about people going through that. And he's pretty darn good, I think, at making that kind of thing interesting. And you see it in Elantris
Mhm.
and you see it here.
Yeah. It's a lot it's better. It's well done, yeah. Elantris gets a bit, annoying with it, but maybe, I don't know, that's just the pace. But yeah, it's a I really just enjoy the whole Mistborn thing.
Yeah. On that pace
Mhm.
comment, it's we've had a lot more economy to deal with. There's been more
Mhm.
time and more mystery building up and more seeds planted and so on.
Mhm.
Elantris is a very short book that moves at a very quick pace.
Yeah.
So then Sanderson describes the room that they're in. It's dirty. There are empty food plates, notes all over the desk, which is very crowded. Sazed had requested a larger desk now fitted with notes, and their food had gone cold. So they're cramming as much studying as they possibly can into as
Yes.
quick a time as possible.
Yeah, because it's like, listen, the city is about to fall, but they just need to nerd out as much as possible. And it's a huge measure of how into what they're doing they are. Like Sazed describes or thinks about, oh, I need to take those plates down to the kitchen, but it's like just haven't had time. Like so, he's usually very meticulous and neat and tidy, but they've just been so into their research that it's kind of everything's taken the back seat. So I like that idea. That's what happens. It's Brandon Sanderson writes nerds so well.
Yeah, and obviously they're cramming for a specific reason that we
Mhm,
know, but it does get addressed later on.
mhm,
I did want to ask you though, how much danger do you think the Terracemen are in? Because Tyndall will say it looks like she's taking sides, but at the same time, they used to be such prized servants. At the
mhm,
same time, they clearly are loyal to their own people now. They have sort of become their own faction,
mhm.
traveling all over the place. So I do think they're in danger. I don't think soldiers are going to charge, keep venture, see them, and just leave them.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, sure, maybe, okay, maybe a certain lord or whatever would be, hey, don't break those. Those are really great, useful tools. I can understand that. But so I initially was like, no, they definitely would hurt the terracemen. I was with you. But now I'm just thinking I wouldn't be completely flabbergasted if Sanderson used their value as servants to save these particular 2. If they were, like, in a whole group or a whole crowd, then they're a faction, they're not just, tools. If they're seen as a
Right.
faction, they'll be destroyed, but if they're seen as just, "Oh," like Justice, the way Justice saw Sazed. As soon as he saw Sazed, he's like, "Okay, serve me." It's like, "Oh, because you're just that's what you are." There's still this perception of terrorism that way. So I don't know. They're in the city, and the Kolos, I don't think are gonna give a damn about a terrorist. Ness.
Yeah,
They're in danger because 'cause they're in the city. Who knows what happens. Mm.
agreed. And I get the sense that whenever there are Kolos around, everyone's in danger,
Yeah.
regardless of status.
Mhm.
But that said, Sazed has a very nice moment of appreciating Tindwill's beauty, which is very
Yeah.
sweet.
He looks at her earrings and and gets, like, kind of distracted, and she's like, "Says it!" And he's like, "I apologize."
Yeah,
I don't know if Tinville knows what he was doing, but he, like, zoned out, I suppose,
yeah.
and so he doesn't know what he was thinking about. He was just thinking about how pretty she is, and then she's like, "Hey, get back to it."
Yes.
Continue.
I am also afraid, however, that all I have known, that my story will be forgotten. I am afraid for the world that is to come. Afraid because my plans failed. Afraid of a doom brought on by the deepness.
Wait, why did he fear that?
And at first read through, my response was very similar to Sazed's, which is to say, why wouldn't you fear the deepness?
Mhm. Yeah,
The thing
yeah.
that's, you know, killing everyone,
Mm.
essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, why wouldn't you? I'm putting that here as our response because like that's the whole big bad. What's wrong with you? It's well, what are you talking about?
She brings up some interesting things. I don't think she's 100% right, but she offers some really interesting points. But we'll get
Mhm,
into those when we actually get a bit farther.
mhm.
Why would he not? The deepness, which we assume is the mist, was killing his people. Without sunlight, their crops would not grow, and their animals could not graze.
But if Quan feared the deepness, then he should not have opposed Alendi. He was climbing to the Well of Ascension to defeat the deepness.
So that is the first questionable thing she says
Okay,
in my mind.
really?
Yeah, she takes it a slightly different direction, which I think is quite interesting. But this far in, it seems to me, and even throughout the chapter, Tyndall takes the position that anyone could stop the deepness.
Yeah.
They just have to go and do it.
Mhm,
And that isn't addressed too much. It's addressed in the form of Elend later on in the
mhm,
scene, I think,
mhm.
but it's never stated. We have asked, is the hero of ages the hero of ages because they did the deed, or are they the hero of ages because they are destined to be? So
Mhm.
is hero of ages person specific or not?
Yeah. Do you have to fulfill the prophecies to be able to do what you're supposed to do at the Well of Ascension? Or can anyone enter the it seems like anyone can enter the Well of Ascension.
Right.
So the Well of Ascension is the person is what we were wondering whether it was person specific. Ah, and then the Hero of Ages. They're two different things actually,
Right.
but we consider them the same.
Right, because to sort of rephrase that, Tyndall doesn't consider the problem of Alendi not being the hero of ages. She
Uh-huh.
assumes if he's going to stop it, he is therefore going to try and stop it. But she doesn't consider what the ramifications could be of someone who fails to live up to their
Mhm.
moral and ethical framework for any kind of reason.
Okay, well, I understand why she thinks this though, because she then goes, yeah, but wait, okay, so he didn't want the wrong person to go to the Well of Ascension. So you say your comment was questionable. For me, mine is okay. He didn't want the wrong person to go. I go to the next step with Tyndall. She explains why she's at that because I found it true. It's like, yeah, well, okay, cool. He feared the deepness, but it's like, well, somebody's got to do something, though. So,
I
but he
right,
was
we have said
opposing
and
a
we
link.
have said that
Yeah.
several times
So
now.
has Alendi
In
himself, who was like, look, I might not be the hero, but someone's got to do it.
Yeah,
When she said that, I didn't say it was questionable. I was actually thinking it's true. I was like, Alendi seemed like a good enough person, which we kind of go into details after this.
right. And there is like the possibility. I don't think this is the actual answer, but it could be a one and done type thing. Only
Mhm.
you can only access the power of the Well of Ascension once in its existence,
Mhm. Yeah.
and then no one else gets to try, and that could be an issue.
Mhm.
But I don't think it's that.
Well,
I
we get to
it
why that is an issue as well.
Yeah. But it really comes down to, it seems to me that, especially when compared against Elend in this chapter, Quan may have either come to the conclusion that Alendi would have had a moral failure at the end for some reason,
Mhm.
or I think he might have had his own plans. But we'll get
Yeah.
into that one later.
That's what makes this chapter such a freaking bombshell.
Okay, I have to
Okay.
say it now. My
Okay.
theory
Uh-huh.
is the Lord Ruler was not Rashek. It is a double bluff, and that was Quan.
Okay. Huh.
Because he does not, when Vin confronts him, he does not say that he's Rashek. He says, "You know
He
nothing of that.
Ooh.
Nothing."
Oh, wow. Okay, so oh my goodness. Okay. Oh, sorry. I got excited and my computer was like, "What's happening?" So TLR was actually Quan.
Why else?
Oh my god!
We have theorized that Rashek would have kept Quan's writings because it granted him legitimacy against the person that everyone thought was the hero of ages. But
Ooh.
what if it was kept? What if Quan kept Alendi's journal because he still felt some sentimental value for Alendi?
You're blowing my mind because it just doesn't make sense. Why would Rashek give a crap about that bloody that journal? You're right. I honestly think you're right because yeah, okay, it makes sense. He kept the journal, and the journal also it kind of shows him how maybe he was wrong about being wrong, because look what a good man Alendi was. I don't know.
I I
I don't.
don't know.
Oh, double. I like that. Double bluff.
I still kind of don't think Rashek would have adopted the Clenny culture because he was such a populist as well.
Yeah, that's true. That remember we did say why would he do that? With all of those questions are then answered by this other reveal.
Yeah,
And Quan is a ferrochemist. Makes sense.
yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, but now this next thing comes along.
Okay, yes. Let's get back on track.
Okay. I mean, let me just put this over here because that's when you brought it up. Okay.
Yes, but by then Kvan was convinced that Alendi wasn't the hero of ages.
Why would that matter? It didn't take a specific person to stop the mists. Rashek's success proves that. Here, skip to the end. Reads that passage about Rashek.
Here, she
Mhm.
is wrong.
Okay.
Tyndwell is just wrong. The
Mhm.
deepness was
Mhm.
not defeated. It was not permanently stopped. It is still out there. It is still dangerous. She does not consider that Rashek
Failed.
failed
Mhm.
or just put a stopwatch on it, so to speak. Hit the pause button.
Yeah, I don't blame her for falling into this
Agreed.
for now. Because it's oh but that's the way the world is. Like, look, we the world didn't end, so of course he was successful. So like she is definitely wrong the way she says Rashek's success proves that. So I think I even circled the word success. I was like, what success you talking about here, lady? But and I feel like they have enough information to figure out that it's not that isn't success. Maybe Vin is the one that needs to push them a little bit more into that, frame of mind that no, hold on. He put the stopwatch or the time or whatever. He kind of put a status effect on it that made it less powerful. But we still are with a red sun here, and we still have Ash. Yeah, I agree with you here, but I can see her logic as well that she's going, well, he had success, so if we assume that success, then it means that it didn't take a specific person to stop the mists.
Hmm.
I love this. I love the logic and the maneuvering that you have to do with this. Yeah, I think they'll get there. I think they'll get there, but at the moment they're not there.
Agreed. I mean, they're already slightly contemplating the
Mm.
possibility that it's back. The mists are
Yes.
killing people,
So figure it
stuff. So
out.
they're very close.
Mhm.
But then we get the real lore drop here.
Mhm. That was okay, but I said, yeah, this was the first "whoa" that I wrote in my book.
I have a young nephew, Von Rashek. He hates all of Klenium with the passion of envious use. He hates Alendi even more acutely, though the two have never met. For Rashek feels betrayed that one of our oppressors should have been chosen as the hero of ages. Nephew!
What? Oh, I was like, so, and he knew about him. So, whoa, that was basically my comment here was literally just whoa. Like, well, I don't know what else to do. It's just I was just whoa. Okay, so now we've just got Rashek is Kwan's nephew. Okay, so that means Kwan knew about Rashek. Then we get the next thing, which I'll put in here.
Alendi will need guides through the Terrace Mountains. I have charged Rashek with making certain that he and his trusted friends are chosen as those guides. And then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, Quan set that up.
Yeah, you set that up. Holy crap. But then you're like, but why, Kwan? Like, okay, the characters have this thought as well. So, but at this point I had the thought. I was like, okay, whoa. So you sent Rashek, who hates the Klenium people. You sent him because oh no, the hero of ages can't be the wrong person. But you didn't consider that Rashek's gonna go in instead?
Well, that's the
Mm.
big problem that Tyndwell
I
settles
love
upon
yeah.
and will merit discussion when she brings it up, I think,
Mhm.
yeah?
Yeah.
Rashek is to try to lead Alendi in the wrong direction, to dissuade him, discourage him, or otherwise foil his quest. Alendi won't know that he has been deceived. So, this was highlighted for me because I had the question, how could Rashek mislead Alendi if Alendi could feel the thumping?
Mhm, I
Um,
thought that as well.
that did raise the subsequent question, did the thumping lead somewhere besides the Well of Ascension?
But then where else would it lead?
Well, Vin thinks that the thumping is moving closer and
Mm.
closer, doesn't she?
It's becoming louder, I suppose, or stronger, so maybe it is moving? Hmm.
I'm pretty sure she thought that the thumping was getting closer, but I could be wrong. Point
Maybe.
being,
Yeah.
though, my question is how many other people know about Alendi's thumping?
And you okay, cool. Yeah, exactly. How many more people? And that goes back to that the theory of the logbook being kept for that reason because he didn't know that Alendi could even sense this thing. Maybe
Hmm.
he didn't know, and the logbook shows him that he did. So at this point, he doesn't know it, and he still thinks Alendi's the wrong person. And this thumping thing, he only figured it out after Alendi was dead.
Yeah.
Mm. Unless it was Alendi.
I
Nah.
mean, we have posited the possibility that it's a world in which the hero of ages legitimately did fall. I mean, Sanderson has stated repeatedly, at least in his lectures, that the premise was that he wanted to make a world where Frodo lost the ring at the end type of a
Mhm.
situation. So it's possible.
I mean, your theory of it being Quan, right? Because the reason that he at the nothing of that and all of that, that whole
Hmm.
discussion, that also could be Rashek failed. It was Alendi. Maybe it was. That's another possibility, but I feel like it's more possibility that Quan did it because of the dominance thing. And like, I don't see how Alendi, the logbook guy,
Could do
failed.
it.
I thought he.
Yeah.
I don't know how he could turn into the Lord Ruler. I don't see how this guy turns into the Lord Ruler. But
I mean, I
if
can't
he,
imagine
yeah,
Elend turning into the Lord Ruler. I can
yeah,
totally imagine Zane turning
uh,
into the Lord Ruler.
even Vin
Uh,
at some point, like if she was dark enough,
yeah,
not even
but
then.
I,
Yeah,
I I think Elend is our model for how
mhm,
Alendi may have been perceived of the time.
yeah,
Again, I'm still my
and I.
money would be on Sazed over
Mm,
Elend for Hero of Ages, but this chapter deliberately,
it does.
specifically, and effectively highlights that Elend is a man who will not violate his moral and ethical code.
Mhm. And it literally it practically puts him in our faces and says, "Think about this." But,
Yeah.
we can't trust Sanderson with anything. But yeah, so okay, so we have the option, okay, we have these options. Alendi actually did go in and did fail because he was a ruthless man, and he did just something happened because he was not the hero of ages. It went badly, and it was Alendi. So Alendi, and that's why the logbook was kept, because Alendi, that's what he used to be like. Okay, so that's a possibility. The other one that I was leaning more towards when you brought it up, which was new to me, was it was actually Quan who was the Lord Ruler, because it could have been. It makes sense because Quan is, but it can't be Alendi because Alendi isn't a ferrochemist.
That we're aware of. No, but the
Yeah.
Lord Ruler's little haven was very terrace.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's Quan. If that's the thing. So if it wasn't Rashik, it's Quan.
That's what I'm
But
thinking.
yeah, but look, I'm just thinking about that. Like, I don't know, maybe I don't know. He gets very terrorist because he feels bad about whatever. The point is mystery. um.
Yep.
So okay, so if so, the whole idea was Rashik is supposed to lead him astray, but yeah, my this astray thing was the thumping.
Yeah.
Sorry. The
If if
Mhm.
Rashek fails to lead Alendi astray, then I have instructed the lad to kill my former friend. It is a distant hope. Alendi has survived assassins, wars, and catastrophes, and yet I hope that in the frozen mountains of Terrace he may finally be exposed. I hope for a miracle. Alendi must not reach the Well of Ascension, for he must not be allowed to take the power for himself. Now, another thought I had, and I forget where it comes in later, but there is the possibility that Quan is lying here
Mhm.
entirely.
Yeah.
Everything is here, and he's hiding clues. This is what I think Tyndwell clues into,
Mhm.
is that there are clues in here that we're supposed to figure out the truth of what happened, but it's not the literal of everything he said. It is
Mm.
possible that that Rashek took the power, set his sights on world domination, and then forced Quan to write some messages denouncing Alendi to give him legitimacy. Uh,
Especially, why does it have to be in steel and everything? But it's only in this was not well known anyway.
yeah,
It's not, like, part of the doctrine.
Yeah. And again, that doesn't answer why Rashek would have opted to keep Alendi's journal.
Mhm. In a special place as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah, it makes so much more sense that it's Quan, but okay. I'm gonna put a relationship line then with this to no, where is it? Nerding hard. Where is the thing? Double bluff! There you go. Sorry, I just enjoy the lines. That's what I enjoy about diagramming. Okay, next point. So that I've started feeling like, ooh, this off just another thing, like I started distrusting Quan in this. I was like, having him.
Agreed.
I mean, obviously, you know that he sent Rashik after him, so you're like, what a dick. And now you're now it's like he's like, yo, he mustn't be fine. You must kill him. Then you're like, oh my god, guy, what happened?
Yeah.
Uh,
Tindwell sat back, frowning. What?
Something is wrong there, I think, but I cannot tell you precisely what.
Let us break it down to simple statements, then. Rashek, the man who became the Lord Ruler, was Kwan's nephew.
Okay, yes. So this is where the diagram is going to come in. Yes.
Yeah, see, now that's in question for us, but not
Mm-hmm.
for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like this method of breaking things down into
Of
simple
course I do.
statements,
Yes.
just to clarify that. But okay, that's point one.
Okay. Point one is Rashek equals nephew.
Yes.
Okay.
Simple enough thing to
Mm-hmm.
grasp your head
Yes.
around.
Yep.
Then next we've got Kvan sent Rashek to mislead or even kill his once friend Alendi the Conqueror, a man climbing the mountains of Terrace to seek the Well of Ascension.
Quan sends Rashek. Rashek? That's not that simple. Excuse me. The sentence has a lot of points in it, actually. Sends Rashek to stop Alendi. That is the main point, right? But we learn within this, we have to also keep in mind from this sentence a man climbing to the mount. He was seeking the Well of Ascension. Also, they were once friends.
Mm-hmm. And that's going to be important
Yes.
for Tindwell later.
Hmm. Once friends. Also, he was the conqueror. I don't know why we have this. He puts that in what the Alendi the conqueror. Like he put
Because he
that in.
conquered the world.
Yeah, he conquered the world, but why do we keep this in mind that he's a conqueror? So I don't know. Does that mean that he's a problem? That's maybe why not Tindwell.
Maybe the Conqueror contrasts with Elend in the sense that
Mm-hmm.
clearly, as it is stated in Kwan's writings, Alendi has probably sacrificed his moral and ethical framework
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in the process of conquering the world. And that's why Kwan doesn't think it's him. And then juxtapose that against Elend, who's willing to give up the crown to
Mm-hmm.
keep his moral and ethical framework intact.
Yeah, because we saw that and he very deliberately Sanderson very deliberately puts these two together. These He brings this
Mm-hmm.
character into the room to
Yeah.
have this discussion with these particular people. Come on. So I'm leaning more towards Elend as the hero of ages, and the announcer being Vin or Sazed or Tindwell. Who knows?
Hmm.
Okay, so that's so those are those statements, right?
Then the next statement is, or passage is, Kvan did this because he feared what would happen if Alendi took Zavel's power for himself. Tindwell raised a finger.
Why did he fear that?
It seems a rational fear, I think.
Too rational, or rather, perfectly rational. But tell me, Sazed, when you read Elendi's logbook, did you get the impression that he was the type who would take that power for himself? So I was with her on this.
Yeah, I and Sazed is as well, and Vin
Mm,
is as well as well. It's a consequence of laying out the simple known facts that you already know. As we already
mhm,
know this, it seems obvious that it is a rational fear. And up till this point, and especially considering I thought that Tindwell was wrong on 2 points leading up to this,
mhm.
but I had a suspicion that she would be right in the point that she gets to. I was very curious to understand what her concern here was. I didn't have an inkling of what it would be.
Mm. I was with her on just the confusion of, uh, but why if you're so worried about sending the wrong person to the Well of Ascension, why do you send, and she says it, yeah, why do you send, uh, Rashek of all people?
Right. So the next passage I highlighted was Sazed shook his head. Actually, the opposite. That is part of what made the logbook so confusing. We couldn't figure out why the man represented within would have done as we assumed he must have. I think that is part of what eventually led Wynne to guess that the Lord Ruler wasn't Alendi at all, but Rashek, his Pac-Man.
Yep, that's what we did. That's what everyone else did. Domination.
Yeah, that's what we lived through when we
Mhm.
read the events of Vin figuring it out. And to a point, I still think that the Alendi that we get, it wouldn't have,
Mm,
probably wouldn't have been the kind to take the power for himself. Now, whether or not there's information that we still don't have, well, we don't know what we don't know. But I do distinctly get the impression that Sanderson, at this point in the book, wants us to agree with the statement that Alendi does not seem like the man who would take the power for himself.
mm. Like, considering what we read, like, and considering that last paragraph, basically, he says before he goes there. So as much as there is, "Oh, he's a ruthless man," and all those other things that has been said about him, we know his final thoughts before he goes in there, and he seems to be thinking the right way. Good. He's not thinking about dominion, he's thinking about saving the world, so it does not make sense that he would be bad, a bad choice, that anyone would be better than him.
Right. Rashek certainly does seem like the worse of the two.
Yeah.
I think I had suggested the possibility that Quan came to some sort of information derived from the prophecy that stated that Alendi would have to fail so that the true hero of ages could rise.
Which is my kind of theory, is that it was all meant to happen anyway.
Yeah, but I don't think we've seen too much, or if anything, to support that
Yeah, we
yet.
haven't. No, but it's a possibility. That's my that do you know what it is? It's my, headcanon that makes me that's actually it. It's just headcanon.
Mm,
It's not in the book. Uh,
right.
mhm.
And then the next segment that we get is
And Kwan says he knew Alendi well. In fact, in this very rubbing, he compliments the man on several occasions. Calls him a good person, I believe.
so
Okay.
this is her setting up her argument
Mhm.
that he doesn't seem like the kind that would give up power.
Yeah, so
And
Kwan knew. So I'm still trying to put the simple statements, but they've left it behind. Kwan knew Kwan knew that Alendi was a good person. Was a good person. Better at least than Rashek.
right. Which then brings up the question is what are lies and what are not lies? Is it like a thou doth protest too much type situation?
Mhm.
Or what? How do you really feel, Quan?
Mm. Yeah, Kwan is irritating me. I believe the logbook way more than I believe Kwan's whatever this is. Kwan's propaganda. I don't
I'm inclined to agree.
know. I think what Sazed's doing is reading the line that she's referring to, or like one of them.
Yes, he is a good man. Despite it all, he is a good man. A sacrificing man. In truth, all of his actions, all of the deaths, destructions, and pains that he has caused have hurt him deeply. And that supports my claim that if he's the kind of person to make sacrifices,
Mhm.
to sacrifice his moral integrity, then someone could believe that he couldn't possibly be the hero of ages. Juxtapose that with Elend. I've said that 1,000 times, but it's
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
But I have to wonder what the practicality of can any surely we are all surely we all fail at some point or another to uphold our framework, even Elend.
Mm-hmm.
So, regardless, well, I don't know where else to go with that,
No,
but I
well,
think
for
you get my
me,
point, yeah?
but yeah, okay. So maybe in action he might have sacrificed his integrity by doing actions, but that the fact is that it hurt him deeply. So he had this integrity underlying it, but
Mm-hmm.
he just has the hurt rather than so he took action, took bad
Mm-hmm.
action, felt guilty. Whereas Elend would take good action and stay away from the guilt, but fail. No
Yeah.
guilt. Which is what Ellen did.
Yeah, I mean, if Elend failed to live up to his values in some way,
Mhm.
if he did an evil act or a morally questionable act,
Mhm.
if he executed his father
Mhm.
for daring to attack his country, that would weigh on Elend. And Elend doesn't seem like the kind of man to execute. He seems more
Mhm.
like an imprison if you have to kind of
Mhm. Yeah.
person.
Yeah, but
So,
the fact that Sanderson chooses this line for Sazed to bring out to us, because there are like she says, there's several times he calls him a good person. He is a good man despite it all. He's a good man. So this is given to us on purpose. All of the deaths, destruction, and pains he's caused, that's hurts him deeply. So cool. The fact that he has guilt makes him a good person. That's kind of what we can get. Okay, sacrificing his integrity. So that makes, but as you said, that guilt doesn't necessarily mean he wouldn't make the wrong choice at some point because he must have. That's what he has the guilt for. So he
mhm.
didn't, but he didn't take pleasure in the destruction. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is a good point that Tyndall says. So Kvan knew Alendi well and thought highly of him. Presumably, he also knew his nephew Rashek well. Do you see my problem? Which I do.
I was a little slow, but I got there.
No, that's the thing. Yes, she knew Rashek. He literally knows Rashek. Though you describe him as hateful and basically and young and whatever. And so why would you send exactly? My question is, why would you send Rashek? So you're so worried about the wrong person that you send a wronger person.
Right.
Mm,
And in theory, if this was done of good intent, the hope would be that Rashek does the deed before they even get close to the Well of
mhm,
Ascension. I mean, Quan could
mm.
just be really dumb and think, well, great, he's going to go, he's going to assassinate the guy, and then he'll come back, no problem. It doesn't sound like he considers the possibility that Rashek could try and take the power for himself.
And it feels like he should though. Why would he be that stupid?
Yeah.
That I don't feel like that's a mistake. That he oopsie poopsie, I sent the psycho. I don't know. I don't know if that's good a good enough reason. He could have just been stupid. Like I know that you're not saying that, but he would need to be. That would need to be the fact for this to make sense. Then trust. So basically, yeah, worry about the wrong person going, but then trust Rashik to do as told. I understand.
Hmm.
I understand that the whole plan is to stop Alendi Kuku, but the thing is, trusting Rashik is part of that plan, and that just doesn't make sense. So there we go.
Why send a man of vile temperament, one whose motivations are based on ennui and hatred, to kill a man you sought to be good and of worthy temperament? It does seem an odd choice.
Exactly. So I'll say exactly. Uh, it's a silly choice, but I think I'll note here that you go. Kwan would have had to be really stupid.
Yeah,
Stupid
or
for
he's
this. Yeah,
lying about
exactly.
something.
More so I'll say it's more likely he is lying about motivations.
Yeah,
Maybe he does think that maybe but he would doesn't say Rashek is the hero of ages. He doesn't do that either.
true. But this
Doesn't.
would have been before
Mhm.
he took the power at the Well of Ascension.
Mm,
Rashek, I mean.
mhm. Yes, but like I feel like he knows that his nephew is going to try and take the power himself. And that would
I
benefit
would,
Quan?
well, I mean, I think Quan said something at some point about being torn between two terrible options: Alendi taking the power or Alendi failing. Like, and he said either
Mm.
or, these are terrible options to have. So it sounds like he considered the risk and determined that Rashek taking the power, or possibly taking the power, would be the lesser of two
Which is
evils, or a potential lesser of two evils. But that discounts the possibility that no one takes the power,
mhm.
that the deepness runs amok, and everyone dies altogether. So three bad options.
Yeah. But I still don't see, because of this, kill a man you thought to be good and of worthy temperament versus wild temperament man. How is he a better choice than Alendi by any stretch of the imagination? So if we're going to send the wrong person, that's the problem. Cool, that's the problem. But then you solve it by sending a wronger. That's what I mean. You send a wronger person.
Yeah, well, I have to wonder, what is the worst that could have happened if Alendi succeeded? Really?
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine a worse case scenario than what Rashek did,
Mm.
other than to say that maybe if he tried, that would have guaranteed the deepness's
Yes.
success
Yeah.
in some way,
Alendi
because he
trying.
wasn't the
Yeah. Or he wasn't Terrace.
wasn't Terrace, or wasn't the hero of ages, and maybe it really was Rashek, which I don't think is the case. Any number of things. I think we just don't have the information yet.
That's why I've said, yeah, Alendi, I put it, yeah, Alendi trying could have been more catastrophic than Rashek trying because of, well of Ascension mystery. That's it.
Cool.
That's as far as we can take it.
And then in the next segment, we've got, but Kvan says right here that he doubts that if Alendi reaches the Well of Ascension, he will take the power, and then, in the name of the greater good, give it up. Tyndall shook her head.
It doesn't make sense, does it? Khan wrote several times about how he feared the deepness, but then he tried to foil the hope of stopping it by sending a hateful youth to kill a respected and wise leader. Khan practically set up Rashek to take the power. If letting Alendi take the power was such a concern, wouldn't he have feared that Rashek might do the same? Good point. That's we're having the thought. We've discussed this basically.
Yeah,
He's supposed to. We're confused with with Kwan's lack of worry about his nephew, and you've said that's because he's lying.
having it spelled out so simply there, my
Mhm.
mind felt blown.
Mhm. Yeah.
I was like, whoa!
I loved it. That's why I said, like, I like having these characters do this thinking for us essentially, because that we do need the characters doing that in any case, because
Mhm.
they have to come to conclusions. So we're along for the ride.
Right. And then Sazed, in his characteristic simplicity, says, perhaps we simply see things with the clarity of those regarding events that have already occurred. Tyndall shook her head.
We are missing something, Sa said. Quan is a very rational, even deliberate man. One can tell that from his narrative. He was the one who discovered Alendi and was the first to tout him as hero of ages. Why would he turn against him as he did?
Again, Tyndall seems to presume that Alendi was the hero of ages. She doesn't seem
Mm-hmm.
to hone in on the possibility that he wasn't and what the dangers
Mm-hmm.
could mean from that. We have an idea of what the dangers could mean if we assume that Rashek wasn't the hero of ages, but that only reinforces Tyndall's point
Mm-hmm.
that maybe Alendi wasn't, but at least he seemed to have good intentions, whereas Rashek clearly had questionable,
Mm-hmm.
more selfish intentions.
Yeah, exactly. And why? And of course, the why. What he doesn't hasn't explained in this rubbing why. Well, we don't know yet why he turned. What made him think this is not the right guy? We've carried on with him being. Oh, I thought it was the right guy. I thought it was the right guy, and then I thought it was the wrong guy. And you're like, okay, but you're not telling me why. We don't know why. We still don't understand why this turn happened. And I don't know if this rubbing tells us, because obviously they are still discussing it. They don't know either.
Right. So then we get Sazed nodded, flipping through his translation of the rubbing. Quan had gained much notoriety by discovering the hero. He found the place he was looking for. There was a place for me in the lore of the anticipation. I sought myself the announcer, the prophet foretold to discover the hero of ages. Renouncing Alendi's end would have been to renounce my new position, my acceptance by the others. And it's important that Sazed be the one to read that and
Hmm.
point that out, because that seems to mirror his own outsider status.
Hmm. His
So
own, yeah.
there's a lot of empathy that Sazed could feel reading that for Quan.
Uh,
Empathy that Tyndwell may not necessarily have in the same way.
well, yeah, I think maybe she could understand it. She also has outsider, but she has outsider reasons for that are different to his. So this is the empathy does work better with him, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is what's going on. That is what was going on in Sazed's mind, and then as he's thinking that, she goes, "Something dramatic must have happened. Something that would make him turn against his friend, the source of his own fame. Something that pricked his conscience so sharply that he was willing to risk opposing the most powerful monarch in the land. Something so frightening that he took a ridiculous chance by sending this Rashek on an assassination mission." Okay, I don't know. Frightening, does it have to be frightening? I don't know. Dramatic is the only thing I can think of. But the ridiculous chance, I mean, what would make you take that ridiculous chance on Rashek?
I mean, if you knew beyond a doubt that the world would end.
Uh,
Well,
yeah.
well, no, he thinks it's worse than the world ending because the deepness is the
Mhm.
world ending, and he's here siding with the deepness.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's too simple to hang our hat on Rashek would be the better option.
But it does make sense if he knew for sure that Alendi trying at all would be the end. Because remember, like if
Hmm.
we decided the Well of Ascension was you could only do it once, which I don't think we believe that, because we're gonna go to the Well of Ascension again. But the
Agreed.
Alendi trying equals end of the world could be something dramatic enough.
Yeah.
So it's like, it has to be a terraceman. Maybe he finds out that it has to be a terraceman, and Alendi is not a terraceman. Alendi does not have ferrochemical powers. That's it. It means the end. Whereas Rashek could at least put a little stopper on the deepness. So maybe he knows that even Rashek taking this over would have been a stopper, would have been better. So his maybe the temperament is not the problem. Actually, it's something else.
So
So that I'm gonna just put that as my question.
I do kind of have Cosmere thoughts. I'm on the topic of trying to figure out what could be worse than the deepness. My mind goes to Sixth of the Dusk and the fear that those characters had at the ones above essentially influencing their planet in some sort of negative way. So maybe there's something Cosmere related that Quan became aware of.
Mm, yeah,
Just that was a thought.
yeah. I hardly ever understand those Cosmere things, so I'll just put it there for all of you guys who understand. Okay.
He fears both the deepness and what would happen if Alendi took the power. Yet he cannot seem to decide which one is the greater threat, and neither seems more present in the narrative than the other. Yes, I can see the problem here. Do you think perhaps that Kvan was trying to imply something by the inconsistency in his own arguments? Or he's lying, Sazed?
Well, I don't what or he's lying. Like, no, they don't consider that yet, I suppose. But then if you're gonna believe he's lying, right? If or he's lying, then we go, why is he lying then?
Yeah.
Lying. What is the truth then? So that's probably that's why it's also like, okay, well, we don't know, we can't do much with his lying. but we would have to figure it out. We need to figure out whether it's true or not. We need to figure out more. I hate this and love it. Yeah. So, do you think perhaps Quan is trying to imply so? There's the other thing. So, what do you mean? What does he mean by imply something? What's something? What could that mean? What could he be implying?
I keep trying to figure out what the implications would be,
And
other than to
yeah.
say that maybe it's possible he was forced to write this under duress.
Ah. Okay, that makes that's a good option. Forced to write this. What could he, yeah, it could be forced to write this by who?
Or it's the thou doth protest too much argument, and he's saying no, Alendi's actually like a propaganda master and he's terrible, and Rashek's actually really good.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think it's that because we have the
With a
logbook.
logbook, yeah, we have his innermost thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have that. Yeah, I feel like we're gonna have to rely on the characters here to open this way of thinking up to us. This inconsistency in his own arguments, like imply. I don't know. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have come to this conclusion. I would just be like,
Yeah.
I'm frustrated with his inconsistent arguments. The end.
Yep.
I don't know if I would be like he's implying something from that.
Tyndall says,
It's possible. The information is too slim. I cannot judge a man without knowing the context of his life.
I thought that was a great line.
Yeah, like I don't know about yeah, the context. I just want more information at all. I don't need to know absolutely. I don't need a biography or autobiography. It would be great. I'm happy. I need a logbook of. I need Kwan's logbook actually, not this thing on the panels, which is very strange. I would yeah. I would want. I agree with her. I want the context. But
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to judge the man. We just need to know stuff. God, I don't even need to judge him. I just need to his I just need knowledge.
Yeah. But really, that is a great line. What a great belief statement, and simply said.
Yeah, great belief statement. Go Tindwell, and of course it's very Tindwell because that's her whole thing. Is she wants to understand. She studies people's lives.
Yep. And obviously, they have to ruminate on that for a
Mhm.
bit because Sazed says, perhaps we have been studying too hard. Shall we take a break? Tyndall shook her head.
We don't have time, Sazed.
He met her eyes. She was right on that point.
You sense it too, don't you?
He nodded. The city will soon fall. The forces pressing upon it. The armies, the kolos, the civil confusion.
I fear it will be more violence than your friends hope, Sazed. They seem to believe that they can simply continue to juggle their problems. I just had this foreboding that it was just you. I felt the pressure, like
Yeah.
I was like, this has gone on for way too long. This is gonna blow up. How many chapters have we had of it's gonna go down?
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, we've had a lot of Elend reflection scenes where
Mm,
he is specifically thinking that the tinder box is about to explode. And it's always funny because maybe it's that we were further removed from that explosion at the time he
mm,
thought it,
mm,
but I never quite felt so intimidated by it. Maybe it's just that I thought that they would be successful or something, but here
mhm.
it is uniquely ominous.
Yes, I like that. I'm gonna put that uniquely ominous. Maybe the removal from it actually does help us understand how ominous it is because it's just so big. It's
Yeah.
not there's nothing we can actually do about it. This is as far like what they're just trying to figure out the actual big problem in the world and then we've got this practical problem, huge problem that's going to happen. And I guess we ourselves were distracted by our characters, the characters trying to trying to work with the problems, to juggle the problems. We were too busy focusing on the juggling to realize exactly how heavy the stakes are because we can't focus on that because that would just paralyze us. And I guess that's what actually helped. Well, what Ellen is struggling with now is that now he can actually notice how horrible it is.
Yeah.
And we have a statement from Sazed about what he thinks of his friends.
They are an optimistic group, unaccustomed to defeat.
This will be worse than the revolution. I have studied these things, Sazed. I know what happens when a conqueror takes a city. People will die. Many people. Yeah.
Invoking, juggling their problems, and then calling them an optimistic group. There's such this weird uh, feeling that is brought out in me
Mhm.
regarding their optimism and their good-heartedness and the good-naturedness against this backdrop. And it's no, not I don't know that it's clown imagery per
Mhm.
se, but it's that spunkiness, that underdog
Mm.
essence, but everything they're saying is so dark right now. It's a very scary thing mixed with this fondness for them all.
Yeah, okay, what I'm feeling is this, like, this true perspective of, like, we always knew that their chances are slim. We always knew that that's they're up against the worst odds. But now you see it
Mhm.
from a different angle. You're like, "Oh my gosh, that's really what they thought they were gonna do, huh? Okay."
Yeah, this scene is very similar in a way
Uh-huh.
to the club's breeze scene.
Uh-huh. Yes. Yes, true. It does it. It's the same, but the thing is, okay, so we were in the club's breeze scene. Now we seeing it from outside, looking at clubs and breeze, these tiny little people in the face of armies. And it makes me feel like, because I remember being overwhelmed by what they're trying to do by overthrowing the Lord Ruler. It just seems absolutely unfathomable. But this, because it's not just one person, it's three armies and it's Kolos and what it actually, this seems even worse. Seems the odds
Yeah,
are worse. It's like at least with
yeah,
you have one target and that's the idea. I feel like this is even more dire. So,
very much so.
mm. So I'll just want to note that this feels worse, feels more dire than trying to take out the Lord Ruler, which is what she's basically saying. She's going to be worse than a revolution.
This is Les Mis when all of the revolutionaries are singing "Drink with Me." It's like the night before the battle, and they're reminiscing about not this scene, more the club's breeze
Mhm.
scene. But
Yeah.
well, anyway. But then we get to Sazed felt a chill at her words. There was a tension to Luthadel. War was coming to the city. Perhaps one army would enter by the blessing of the assembly, but the others would still strike. The walls of Luthadel would run red when the siege finally ended, and he feared that end was coming very, very soon. That was, I think, a darker passage than I'm accustomed to getting out of Sanderson.
Mhm.
The the walls of Luthadel would run red.
You know
Like
what?
I was like,
Yeah.
damn.
Look, for me, it wasn't actually out of Sanderson. It's out of Sazed's mind because it's in his POV.
Mm,
I'm like, geez,
well said.
Sazed. Like, so that's what it felt. That was what was more shocking to me, is that Sazed is thinking in this manner, and in such a, like, it gave me Lord Ruler imagery, like of the fountains and things like that. Because remember, that's what happens at those executions, right? But then I think of the walls, which are even bigger than just those fountains, and I think of just the horror. What like, I understand that it would usually, that's like the waters of the Luthadel would run red, or the streets would run red with blood and whatever. But the walls, that, I don't know, just the vastness of the amount of blood that would be required. It's so the ominous plus 1,000. Just fear ramped up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Sazed responds, "You are right. We must continue to study."
So I get, mm, you're right. We must consider. Look, that is basically all they can do,
Yeah.
and try and figure it out. And then studying will give them an idea of this, if there's anything to do. Otherwise, we'll just die. So it's like, you know what? Instead of them drinking, I suppose the parallel with clubs, rather nerding rather than drinking the night before the battle. That's my interpretation there. And you know what? I'm glad that they just get time together, even so, even though.
Yeah. She nodded, showing a fatalistic resolve. This was not a task they could complete in the time they had. And then Sanderson goes on to talk a little bit about the indexes that they use in ferochemy
Mhm.
and how they're helpful, but not, it's not going to be their saving
They
grace.
would they would they would this is years of research that they're trying to cram in. So just we get a sense of the scope. Sense of the scope.
Yeah.
Their actually it's a sense of the direness of their situation. The odds of their situation not being yeah.
How much memory is too much memory? Like if they just dumped all of their memories into their brain at once, would they have a seizure?
They would. That's what I think. Butterfly effect sort of thing. Uh, sense yes, sense of the magnitude of their task. So we just
Yeah.
get this
And
big ominous pressure.
fatalistic is just a great word
Mhm,
to drive home the intensity of this scene. And it really
mhm,
is. That's a great word for it. It is intense.
mhm,
The last two things I noted were a great deal of information came from the mouths of simple people doing their best to remember what their lives had once been like, or more often, what the lives of their grandparents had once been like. The keepers hadn't been founded until late in the second century of the Lord Ruler's reign. And then they continue to study. But those last two bits of information there are incredible lore to
mhm.
us about
Yes.
how they get their information as keepers and
Mhm.
how unreliable that information is. And it gives us a little bit of the timeline for when the keepers were founded.
Yeah. So it makes sense that their knowledge it 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 opens up the possibility, hey, listen, it's the best they can do, but it's still like having ancient scrolls that are burnt and, you know, not knowing how to translate things, whatever. It's archaeology, actually. It's not just having a library available to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how the context affects the collection of such things.
And then we get to the second scene, which is the Elland POV. As many of his other scenes have started, he stands on his balcony in the cold looking over the city. He takes note of the smokestacks that are coming from disparate houses, not all of them, and he notes the large amount that are without smokestacks,
Mhm.
specifically that they are probably inhabited regardless and they're cold. And these passages really highlight the sense of responsibility that he feels for the people of Luthadel. And in fact, it's in that very first line that he has. I should have been able to do more for them. I should have found a way to get more coal. I should have managed to provide for them all.
Yes, I mean, this is still the defeated Erland. We not he hasn't recovered.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the why of his defeat. It's like this is what he's lost, his failure, the sense of his failure.
Yeah.
Failure to live up to the responsibility.
There was something almost fatherly in the way that he viewed the I have to provide for them all
Mhm.
type of an element. But
Yeah.
then we really get a sense of just how out of sorts he is, because in
Mm.
the next segment we get it was humbling, even depressing to admit that the Lord Ruler had done better than Elland himself. And then it goes on to list a bunch of the would-be positives of the Lord Ruler's reigns: low crime rates, food for most, and what have you.
Yeah, it still goes back to the safety versus freedom argument. Like there's some people would rather just have the look. It was better back then, so I'll want that theme. So
Don't tint the Lord Ruler's reigns with
mhm.
nostalgia glasses, Elland.
Yeah, but yeah, it is. He's. I like that measure of how out of sorts he is.
Then we get some interesting information, which juxtaposes with our knowledge that Straff has been talking to Justes.
Hmm.
We learn that Justes has not sent emissaries into the city, and he's thinking about the Kolos, and he thinks, we haven't been paying enough attention to that threat. There's just been so much to do, so much to worry about. that we couldn't focus on an army that might be as dangerous to our enemies as it is to us. And like he did have that moment earlier on. It's an excellent reflection back to when he's like, well, we've got 2 armies on our doorstep. We cannot think about the Kolos right now. We can only handle what's in front of us at this very moment.
Exactly. He wasn't wrong about that. He wasn't wrong to focus on what was in front of him. And then that also goes back to the optimism discussion that we had beforehand. All of that. They don't even have time to realize how horrible the situation is. And this makes sense. Why? Because they're busy. So much to do, so much to worry about that we couldn't focus on an army. Like, that's it. There's so much to do and so much to worry about that they don't even have time to worry about how horrible their situation is, which is good. We need that.
Yeah.
Also, here with this, we couldn't focus on an army that might be as dangerous to our enemies as it is to us. I was thinking about that and I was like, what should they have tried to use the Kolos against their enemies? But I don't think Elend have taken that option even if he had considered it, because it just seems too gruesome. It's too, like, I was like, oh yeah, cool, consider triggering the Kolos against everybody else, but it's like I don't think Ellen would sit well with that.
1000%
Mm,
agree. His is not the way of chaos.
yeah.
Though I certainly do believe Jostes would offer a better deal than Set or Straff.
Mhm.
The next line that we get is, it was looking less and less likely that the Kolos would attack Set or Straff. Apparently, Jostes was enough in control to keep them waiting to take a shot at Luthadel itself. So when you compare that to the having not sent emissaries
Mhm.
into the city line, and you compare that to Straff saying he has been speaking with them,
Mhm.
I can imagine some sort of scene which involves Elend and Jostes confronting each other, and Jostes was like, you met with Straff outside of Luthadel.
Mhm.
You invited Set into the city to talk to him, but you ignored me.
Mhm.
And because we know that Jostes's whole shtick this book from that one scene is, no one's taking me seriously. So
Okay.
I could see Jostes being super pissed at Elend right now, especially with Straff's, commentary.
Mm.
So I suspect that the Kolos are primed to be anti-Elend
Yeah.
right now.
Then there's also my theory of it's just something's happened to Justice anyway, because we had the leader of them, but that could be a
Yeah,
red herring. Justice, yeah, I agree. He did not try to court Justice, and that is gonna backfire for him. It definitely made
yeah,
Straff seem more appealing, because
yeah,
I do want to note that Justice's sort of temperament in this book, like, noted nobody taking me seriously.
yeah.
So that would come to fruition.
And then Demio urges Elend back inside where it's warm, and Elend notes that Ham has assigned more guards to him,
Hmm.
but he thinks it's kind of pointless because Straff wouldn't need to kill him now that he wasn't king. And I'm like, sir, have you met your father?
Yeah, Straff will just kill him because
He
because
doesn't like him.
yeah, Straff will totally kill him just because. There, that's it. I'm not even going to put another word in. I'm just because that's how far Straff will think about that. It makes sense to me, and it made me a bit scared walking with him in this POV. I'm like, is he about to be attacked? Oh yeah, and this next thing that comes up is more of Elend,
Good guy,
Mister
Elend.
Good Guy Elend Integrity Man.
Yes.
Hmm.
Demio, when is your next survivor rally? Tonight, my lord. Elend nodded. He'd feared that. It would be a cold night. My lord, do you still intend to come? Of course. I gave my word that I would join with your cause. That was before you lost the vote, my lord. That is immaterial. I am joining your movement because it is important to the Ska, Demio, and I want to understand the will of the people. I promised you dedication, and you shall have it. And Yeah, way to go, Ellen. That
Mhm.
that is going to be something that saves you in some way,
It
I
is. It's gonna
foresee.
benefit him. Yeah, this will benefit him. He's actually going to like, I like that Demure didn't even think that he is gonna come, and that just increases the goodwill because that means the survivors rally people. They probably didn't expect it. They also knew most of the higher ups, I suppose, would also go, "Yeah, we don't really believe Ellen's commitment to us. We know that he's using us, but he's actually going to benefit from it. I don't know,
Help.
maybe. Yeah, it's gonna actually also help him psychologically, I think. It's gonna help him think about what they're fighting for. It's not just a means to an end. That's what my prediction is. It's not just, "Oh,
Hmm.
well, this is useful." It's like, no, actually, he's gonna value what they are trying to do.
Right.
Oh, sorry. One more thing. Sorry. With the my versus the, that hurt a lot. It was a good thing, a good slip up for him to make. Because remember, I always would go, "Geez, Ellen, my city, huh? My kingdom, my throne." And we needed him to think that way. Now he's like, "Oopsie, my, ooh, they're not his, but they're the people. So whether they're his or not, he cares."
Yeah. And then he tries to study, but he can't concentrate. Understandably so, because depression. And he goes for a walk.
Walking is processing for him. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I think they also note how his body is changing because his clothes are a bit tighter and stuff. Hey.
Hmm.
Okay.
Buff Ellen.
Yeah.
He stopped himself from turning toward Vin's rooms. She needed her rest, and it didn't do her much good to have him peeking in every half hour to check on her, so instead he turned to wander down a different passageway.
I wrote here cope at this
Yeah.
point. At this point, this is what I was thinking. I was like, cope. He's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna explain to myself why I need to stay away from Vin because I'm so uncomfortable with her. It's still cope. No, considering what
Yeah.
we get later on.
So he wanders aimlessly through, like, the catacombs that is his home,
Hmm.
and he thinks, I can't fix the city's problems. I have to let Penrod handle that. He's the one the people want. And that should have made things easier for Alan. It let him focus on his own survival, not to mention let him spend time revitalizing his relationship with Vin. She seemed different lately. Alan tried to tell himself that it was only her injury, but he sensed something deeper. Something in the way she looked at him, something in the way she reacted to his affection. And despite himself, he could think of only one thing that had changed. He was no longer king. Stupid Ellen!
Come on. Like I was like, really? Really, Ellen?
This puts away my theory that he would have some sort of concern
Hmm.
over him treating Vin like the knife. This is the depression speaking.
Hmm.
It's good that he notices that Vin is off in a way, but he's
Hmm.
so wrapped up in his depression that he assumes it's because he's not good enough for
Yeah.
her, not the other way around.
This yeah, that I didn't see it coming. I really didn't see this as his. I mean, I was convinced it was about this because I I underestimated Ellen's own insecurity, especially after a defeat. The depression, like you're saying, the depression speaking, the defeat makes him believe things that stupid.
Yeah. And then do you want to have that discussion now about men deriving their sense of self worth from their competence and their.
We can do that in this is the next one, yeah,
Okay.
because it's the same theme.
Vin was not shallow. She had shown him nothing but devotion and love during their year and a half together. Yet how could she not react, even if unconsciously, to his colossal failure? During the assassination attempt, he had watched her fight, really watched her fight for the first time. Until that day, he hadn't realized quite how amazing she was. And that's quite the opposite of what Vin thinks is going on.
Yeah, Ben thinks that he's like, and we did as well. We thought he was creeped out. We thought he was like icked from this. Okay,
Yeah.
we thought he was properly like traumatized. And I feel like if that was the case, we would have a thought towards that here. But he's really like this is not cope. I don't feel like this is cope. He's like he hasn't realized how quite amazing she was. So it's like, wow. So it's not the trauma. It's the, oh my God, I'm not good enough. I was surprised.
Yeah.
Were
I
you also surprised?
I was very surprised. I mean, again, I was thinking that his depression here would be directed at a slightly different
Target, yeah.
topic regarding the knife
Yeah.
themes,
That would be good enough. That, yeah, knife theme, yeah.
but seeing this, I think immediately that Tyndall needs to step in and
Mhm.
give them a good slap on the face and say, "Get your shit together, you two."
Yeah. Stop being, "Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not gonna." I actually got very frustrated because now they're both being stupid. Like, I think I was giving Ellen a lot of grace when I was thinking, listen, it's traumatic and whatever. He's gonna get over it. It makes sense, but the insecurity is not making sense to me. So both of them being insecure is it's funny to me. Ah,
Yeah. And then we get a sense of just how amazing he thinks she is with she was a force like thunder or wind, which is a sweet line.
yeah, it's actually, just try and think of it that way. It's like you actually kind of think of her as a god or something. Just think about it. Wind and thunder, natural things like that, were the source of people creating gods. They were like that because it's so powerful, right? So if he thinks
Hmm.
of her as this force, like thunder or wind, it makes sense that you flinch when someone that powerful and that incredible is is near you. So it's like she's divine in a way. And
Yeah.
she's absolute. It's like, what would you do if your partner was Superman? Like, I actually asked this. I was like, what would you, I asked this to my husband, like, what would you do if I had crazy superpowers? And then he obviously was just like, I would start shit with everyone because then he would. But still, like, there would be that initial thing of, how do you reconcile that you are Superman's partner? How do you, as Lois, go, I'm a human, and
Yeah.
not go look at them and go, wow? So I can understand where he's at.
I mean, a direction I don't particularly want to take this is the eugenics of it,
Mhm.
but I suppose it really comes down to the humanity of it, loving the
Yes.
person,
Mhm.
the soul of a man,
Mhm.
and who they are more so than their awesome superpowers.
Yeah, you have to come, but you have to. So he loved her before that, right? Essentially, before he really realized
Yeah.
how incredible she is. So he knew she was awesome. Don't worry, he knew she had powers, and he knew Mistborn were a thing. Absolutely. But seeing it is like, it makes him see his partner differently because he was in love with her for a completely different reason.
Yeah.
But now think about it. He's now thinking of this, oh no, but I'm not a king. So she's got elevated, she's gone way above him in his mind, and he's gone way below her in his mind as well. So it's very easy for him to believe that because he's not king, because that sounded so far fetched. But it's easy in his current state of mind to think Vin doesn't value me. And I suppose this is what we get to with the difference between a woman valuing herself and a man valuing himself.
Right. The way she had killed that last man, smashing his head with her own. How could she love a man like me? I couldn't even hold my throne. I wrote the very laws that deposed me. So that dot dot dot, I think,
Mhm.
speaks to trauma from
Okay, yeah.
the head smash.
So at least, yeah, that wasn't completely left behind, but the what he took from it, I think, is still real.
Yeah, agreed.
I think if it was really, really about him seeing Vin completely differently, then he would have gone further with that thought. But instead, his mind goes to, how could she love a man like me?
Yeah,
Stupid Ellen, but I get it.
very stupid, Ellen. But he's not totally stupid because he thinks he felt like he should be scrambling, trying to figure out a way to convince Finn that he was worthy of her. But that would only make him seem more incompetent. At least he is that rational. Don't be desperate.
I'll put that here. I guess, yeah, you can't be like, but I'm sorry, I'm not king. I'm sorry, I'm not king. So it makes sense. Don't yeah. I'll put here what you said. Don't be desperate. Be manly.
There was no correcting past mistakes, especially since he saw no real mistakes he had made. He had done the best he could, and that had proven insufficient.
Good, Ellen.
Yes, good, Alan. I can think of one big mistake, though, and that
Which
was
is
ignoring the assembly for so long.
okay. Yes. Okay.
But I do take his point, and yes, but again, he rose to the occasion when necessary and did a lot of things that needed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And he is, I think, still earning long game points.
Mm-hmm.
But again, his framing as it pertains to Vin is just totally off whack. That is not why she's upset with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's not upset with you. She's
He's
upset with
not.
herself.
Yeah, which is hilarious because just this lack of communication between them, it kills. Giving me Elantris vibes. And that's not as bad as Elantris.
Now he felt nervous, tense, a little like he assumed Vin usually felt. Maybe I could learn from her. What would Vin do in my situation?
Oh, I absolutely loved this. I felt such affection reading this because we
Mm-hmm.
have the empathy that Ellen has because he's like, oh, I suppose this is what Vin usually feels like. Because, yes, that's how much he understands Vin. He thinks about her. Okay. Some people be like, oh, well, duh. What do you want to give him a cookie for that? It's like, no, no, I just like that about him and let me like it.
Yeah. And again, we get that flipping of the script here. Vin has been adopting some of Ellen's habits for
Mm-hmm.
studying the deepness, and now we've got Ellen studying some of Vin's habits.
Mm. What does he take from learning then Ellen trying to learn from her?
When in doubt, talk to Sazed.
You know what? I would do that. If there was a character AI Sazed, I'd speak to him.
And then he does indeed go to speak with Sazed and Tindwell.
Mm-hmm.
Hey everyone. Yet again, Kita and I were called away mid-session, and in between yesterday and today, I think we both came to the conclusion that we don't particularly like this new format quite as much as we hoped it would. The benefits, that of the diagram and the visuals and all of that, I don't think really added enough meaningful difference that we weren't already getting from our read throughs. So I think for the time being, we're going to go back to our reading, which I suspect a lot of people preferred anyway, or would prefer anyway. And we'll see whether or not we maintain the reading format going forward. I do still like to experiment and change things up from time to time, but for the rest of the chapter, at least, we're going back to the reading.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He knocked quietly and got no response. Finally, he poked his head in. Sazed and Tindwell sat quietly before a desk piled high with scraps of paper and ledgers. They both sat staring as if at nothing, their eyes bearing the glazed-over look of someone who had been stunned. Sazed's hand rested on the table. Tindwell's rested on top of it. I looked at that and I thought, oh, that's so cute. But creepy, but cute.
I thought it was cute. And then, yeah, just thinking about that, it's like, okay, I suppose it looks creepy because, like, they're just zoned out. They probably look like they're on drugs. So,
Right?
yeah, so that, but he obviously, he would know from context and all of that. So it's not like he would be thinking they're on drugs. But
Sure.
yeah, uh, and he noticed the hand. That's all that Ellen does. He doesn't think beyond that. I don't feel like he's made a distinct. He's like, he just saw the hand, and that's it.
Yeah, he makes no judgment,
Mm.
but it's sweet. Sazed shook himself alert suddenly, turning to regard Elend. Lord Wensher, I am sorry, I did not hear you enter. It's all right, Saz, Elend said, walking into the room. As he did, Tindwell shook awake as well, and she removed her hand from Sazed's. Now, is that the first time we've had Elend call Sazed Saz?
It seems like it. I don't feel like I don't feel like that's normal or
Yeah.
normal. I don't feel. Yeah, it stood out to me.
Yeah, me as well.
Mhm.
There's a small part of me that is like, how dare you? That is Kelsier's nickname for him. You have not earned the right, but he's earned the right. If anyone has, Elend has.
Yeah. He's the leader now.
Yeah. I actually have no issue with him using it.
Mhm.
I'm partly just being funny, but it is noteworthy because I think it is the first
Mhm.
time he has used the nickname.
Mm.
Elend nodded to Demio and his companion, who were still following, indicating that they should remain outside, then closed the door.
Elend,
Tindwyl said, her voice laced with its typical undercurrent of displeasure.
what is your purpose in bothering us? You have already proven your incompetence quite soundly. I see no need for further discussion.
This is still my home, Tindwyl. Insult me again and you will find yourself ejected from the premises. Tindwyl raised an eyebrow. Sazed paled. Lord Winshire, I don't think that Tindwyl meant to... It's all right, Sazed, Ellen said, raising a hand. She was merely testing to see if I had reverted back to my previous state of insultability. Tindwyl coming in hot here, I think. A bit.
Yeah, yeah, but I thought she was just this is a result of her just being angry at
Mm-hmm.
what has happened with the king the position. I thought that she knew about Elend being truthful, and that's why he is no longer king. So I thought she already knew that, and we find out later
Mm.
in this chapter she didn't. So I thought that's what she was so angry about. But basically, she's just angry because Ellen's not king anymore.
Yeah, I really think she's very fond of him.
Mm,
And as we learn very well in this chapter, she falls on a very specific side of the equation of how valuable the title of king alone is versus
mhm,
what a person might have to become in order to get it. She
mhm,
comes down very hard on the side of it's okay to make certain moral sacrifices if it means keeping that title. Yeah?
mhm. Yeah.
So it's understandable that she would come in hot.
And I love that he perceives that why she's doing it that way as well.
Hmm.
Like he's not just gonna react to her in a bad way. It is a test, so we see what we see. Like Elland rising to the challenge very well.
Yeah. As he does tend to do,
Mhm.
Tindwyl shrugged.
I've heard reports of your moping through the palace hallways like a lost child.
Those reports are true, but that doesn't mean that my pride is completely gone.
Good. Seat yourself if you wish.
Elend nodded, pulling a chair over before the two and sitting. I need advice.
I've given you what I can already. In fact, I've perhaps given you too much. My continued presence here makes it seem that I'm taking sides. In which case, yeah, I'm like, you've taken sides, okay? You've taken Sazed's side, and that's the end of it. Like, just she's just being difficult, yeah.
Yeah. She's very upset with him, and I feel as if I've just said it, but her upsetness, I think, is born of the this is a good man. He should
Mm.
be king.
Yeah, it's like her being actually upset with the situation
Yeah.
rather than just specifically Ellen. It's just she's just frustrated with the whole thing.
Yeah. And then Ellen just says the most perfect thing a person can say, I think, to entice a keeper into giving advice. I'm not king anymore. Therefore, I have no side. I'm just a man seeking truth. Tindwyl smiled.
Ask your questions then.
Because that's what being a keeper is
Mhm,
all about, right? Sharing lost truths and so on.
mhm. And she smiled, like, she properly smiled. That's like her standing up and hugging him,
Yeah.
basically, after that attitude she gave him.
Yep. Saz had watched the exchange with obvious interest. I know, Ellen thought. I'm not sure I understand our relationship either. Here's my problem. I lost the throne essentially because I wasn't willing to lie.
Explain.
I had a chance to obscure a piece of the law. At the last moment, I could have made the assembly take me as king. Instead, I gave them a bit of information that was true, but which ended up costing me the throne.
I'm not surprised.
I doubted that you would be. Now, do you think I was foolish to do as I did?
Yes,
Ellen nodded.
but That moment isn't what cost you the throne, Ellen Wincher. That moment was a small thing, far too simple to credit with your large scale failure. You lost the throne because you wouldn't command your armies to secure the city, because you insisted on giving the assembly too much freedom, and because you don't employ assassins or other forms of pressure. In short, Ellen Wincher, you lost the throne because you are a good man.
So there's a lot there to discuss. I
Mhm.
agree that that end bit was small scale compared to the many blunders he made when he was early on in his career as king,
Mhm.
because you wouldn't command your armies to secure the city. That was not a bad move, I think, actually. The genie's out of the bottle in terms of he set up the law and then the law ousted him.
Mhm.
And using armies would have been a large moral sacrifice and would have, I think, led to long term instability. Would you agree
Mhm.
or disagree?
Yeah. Look, he did his best. I'm at that point of like he did his best, and he wasn't as aggressive as he would have been if he had made those moral sacrifices you're talking about. So
Right.
yeah.
The second part,
Mhm.
because you insisted on giving the assembly too much freedom, that I am inclined to agree with Tyndall on. Obviously, we really don't have much information on what those laws and power dynamics are at the moment, but I do remember early on feeling very strongly that Elland had already given up way too much. What do
Yeah,
you think?
the way that he worked with the assembly, the fact that the he because remember the assembly was basically walking all over him, and then he took some time to get all kingly and stuff, but that was him ignoring the assembly, and that's one of the
Mhm.
biggest things. So part of giving them too much freedom was also just ignoring them.
Yeah, and a
Mm.
consequence of not having your commanding presence from the very start is it made
Yeah.
ousting him look like a viable option, whereas
Mhm.
had he done more to secure the loyalty and strengthen his position among the assembly, even if he didn't have as much power, was still a blunder, I think.
Yeah.
The third part was
Mhm.
don't employ assassins or other forms of pressure. And that,
Mhm.
I think, yeah,
Mhm.
there's a trade off to that. But ultimately, if Aland is trying to take the moral high ground, I think he's right to play that way, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that he was right in the decision she made with in terms of how aggressive he was supposed to be because he that's just not what he's like. It's the truth. But then because she the next sentence is you lost the throne because you're a good man. All of those things he did or didn't do because he's a good man. So all
Right.
of that so that he didn't employ assassins and all of that sort of thing because he doesn't want to make those moral sacrifices to keep the throne. So yes, she described all the blunders, I suppose, but the source of all of that, which I think we agreed with anyway, we agreed with Elland or we understood Elland's reasoning. It's just Elland was a good guy. It's the same thing as that last. That's the same reasoning as that last little blunder that he did as well. Not that it's little, but that last thing there where he could have not told them about the the changing vote thing. He could have not spoken about that. But of course he lost the throne because he's a good man. And yeah, it's I just wrote it's the same thing. It's just more of him being that like we were speaking about in the yesterday's recording, basically. The Ellen jeez, I've lost it. With the oh yes, Ellen would not make a moral sacrifice.
Yeah,
He stays with his sticks to his principles.
right. Elend shook his head. Can you not be both a man who follows his conscience and a good king? Tyndall frowned in thought. And that, of course, is, basically the thesis statement for
Mhm,
his journey and to a lesser degree, Alendi's, I think, and this chapter as a whole.
mhm.
You ask an age old question, Lord Wencher, Sazad said quietly. A
In
question
my
that...
book, just by the way,
Mhm.
in my book, it's Elend. Sazed calls him Elend. Interesting. So we've got the
Oh,
Saz, and in my book, he says you ask an age-old question, Elend. Hmm.
that's so much more friendly.
Mhm.
A question that monarchs, priests, and humble men of destiny have always asked. I do not know that there is an answer. Should I have told the lie? Sazed. No, Sazed said, smiling. Perhaps another man should have in your position, but a man must be cohesive with himself. You have made your decisions in life, and changing yourself at the last moment, telling this lie, would have been against who you are. It is better for you to have done as you did and lost the throne, I think. That is
I love that.
f- font of wisdom, Sazed.
Mhm.
Beautifully written. Well done, Sanderson.
Mhm.
I agree. I loved it too. And this is really important to the Alendi comparisons. You have
Mhm.
made your decisions in life, and changing yourself at the last moment, telling this lie would have been against who you are. That
Mhm.
is just screaming at me, and I hope, and I almost suspect, that Sazed and Tindwyl will reflect later on in the book about
Mhm.
this conversation, and that will unlock something for the two of them regarding the conversation that they just had about Alendi.
Yes. Like what would are you saying what would that unlock for you? What do you think would it would unlock for those 2?
I don't know because I haven't
Yeah,
read
okay.
ahead. I just suspect maybe they'll clue into the whole Alendi is a sacrificing man and then compare
Mhm.
that to Elend and be like, okay, maybe that's why Quan betrayed Alendi
Mhm.
because he thought
Yeah.
that Alendi would sacrifice his moral values for the sake of the greater good and cause more harm in the
Mhm.
process.
Yeah. And then I mean, also at the last moment, just that's I underlined that changing yourself at the last moment. I underlined it because it makes me think very very directly about like what Alendi would have done and that sort of thing because of just the idea of a snap decision or a moment. It just brought me there. I
Mm.
already made the connection.
Tindwyl frowned.
His ideals are nice, Sazed, but what of the people? What if they die because Elend wasn't capable of controlling his own conscience?
I do not wish to argue with you, Tindwyl. It is simply my opinion that he chose well. It is his right to follow his conscience, and trust in Providence to fill in the holes caused by the conflict between morality and logic. Again, it's Sanderson hitting the themes on the head, the different ideological positions to take on the
Yeah,
matter.
exactly. It was I love that he brought in Providence to fill in the holes. Like, yeah, he's just like, you know what? I'm gonna. This is exactly how Elend is operating, and I actually feel like that's how Sazed would operate as well.
And I think it really, really expertly hits at Tindwell's blind spot here
Mm-hmm.
because she doesn't take into account, I suppose you could say, that more optimistic mindset of things happen for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
things will be all right in the end type of a situation or idea.
She also doesn't realize the toll or doesn't seem to think about the toll something will changing himself would take on him.
Mm-hmm.
Vin herself knows she wouldn't she I think earlier on I don't know what it was in reference to. It might have been about some sort of assassination. It was like she wouldn't like what happens to Ellen if he did that or if he let that happen. So like she herself also knew that the toll of of just making one little moral compromise, it would ruin him.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how he works. Again, we've I mean it really hitting really hard with Ellen is good guy.
Yeah. And it's the slippery slope. If you compromise your values this once, it
Mhm,
becomes a little bit easier to do it again the next time. And then a
mm.
little bit easier the time after that. And there's always a good reason for it.
Yep,
There,
exactly.
yeah. And then one day you become a tyrant.
Yeah, and you're like, "Oh, but all of you become the Lord ruler." Like, "Oh, all of the things I did for reasons, for my reasons, and it was for the good of everyone else." Okay, cool.
Yeah. Providence. You mean God? I do. Alan shook his head. What is God, Sazed, but a device used by obligators? I actually liked that line quite a lot because it is such an in-world line,
Mhm. Yeah,
if
yeah,
that
it's not
makes
just
sense.
it's not an like, just a human question that we recognize, it's an in-world thing. That's what he sees God as in his context. That's all that God has been in his life in this for many of these people. Sazed, obviously, it's different to him because he studied religion. That's the
Yeah.
only reason. Everybody else would think about it that way, I
Yep.
think.
Why do you make the choices that you do, Ellen Wencher? Because they're right. And why are these things right? I don't know, Ellen said with a sigh, leaning back. He caught a disapproving glance from Tindwell at his posture, but he ignored her. He wasn't king. He could slouch if he wanted to. That was very funny.
Yeah, it's like, okay, okay, Ellen. He's like, I'm gonna screw you, mom.
This does bring up the topic that I think is all too common in current day discourse, particularly as a point of contention between atheists and theists, which
Hmm.
is where does our morality come from?
Hmm.
And I'm not going to come down too hard on one side or the
What
other.
that there is that argument usually made where it's like our morality comes from religion, but I actually saw quite a great clip the other day, which was like explaining that morality, that religion doesn't necessarily have to be the source of morality, be the source of morality in this spiritual sense. It's a collection of lessons that
Hmm,
our species has learnt
I
as
really
it's
like
developed.
that.
Mm. And that's where morality came from. It's because this is how we function. This is how we become a society with these rules. And yeah, it just took the form of religion.
Right.
Yeah, and
I like
like
that.
you said as well, like I won't go on to, oh, religion's useless, let's not have it, or any of that. Let's not have that discussion. But it just that actually made me think of that. This made me think of that clip.
Yeah.
Because it's
And
like you can't separate them. Yeah,
right. And
that's it.
my mind goes to the topic of Judeo Christian values and whether or not they have informed the founders'
Mhm.
ideals as they shaped America and how that has influenced culture. There are a lot of really interesting arguments on both sides. I'm not looking to turn this stream into that conversation, but it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
You talk of God, Sazed, but don't you preach of 100 different religions? 300. Well, which one do you believe? I believe them all. We've heard this from him before, I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah, it's still endearing, and it still makes sense to me. That actually
Hmm.
goes back to what we were saying. You are able to believe them all because you see value in all of them.
Yeah.
That's what he means by believing in them all. He's taking lessons from them all. Obviously, you see what Ellen says because he's like, yeah, well, it doesn't make sense. How could you believe all of them? Because they're obviously they they all claim to be the religion, but that's not what Sazed does with religion. He takes the value of from it.
Yeah, well, it's a very, I think, philosophical way of
Mm.
viewing and inhabiting religion.
It made me think of Life of Pi because when he's young, he explores all the religions and says that he believes in all of them. It's just that was the same endearing thing.
Yeah. And there is something to be said for how the people of different ages view religions,
Mhm.
view their own religion, and which areas of said religion that they choose to focus on as opposed to others. And surely there's a lesson to be learned from any of them in any specific circumstance. They don't all
Mhm.
need to align in that way. If you're
Yeah.
just looking for some sort of guidance, or as
Yeah.
you put
Truth
it earlier,
even.
like
Yeah.
what are the lessons that history has
Mhm.
taught us
Mhm.
that has been passed through
Yeah.
generations? What is that
What
generational wisdom?
yeah. What are the ideals that, what do we worship, I suppose? What do we actually find good?
Mm-hmm. Ellen shook his head. That doesn't make sense. You've only pitched a half dozen to me, but I can already see that they're incompatible. It is not my position to judge truth, Lord Wencher, Sazed said, smiling. I simply carry it. Sweet line. I
Yeah,
think
and
we've
I
heard
love that.
that before,
uh,
though.
I bet, yeah, and because it's the same sort of thing, like the frustrating conversations people have had with Sazed about religion. Everybody is like, "What? Add this to the list of all of the really awesome conversations everybody's had with Sazed about religion." And I love that he smiles. Sazed said, smiling.
Hmm.
I simply carry it. It's I don't know, maybe I don't think we get much smiling from Sazin. But I don't know, maybe I've just haven't been paying too much attention, but I like that he seems a little bit smilier.
I
He
agree.
is quite content.
Such a
I
great
wonder
grandfather.
why.
Ellen sighed. Priests. Sometimes talking to Sazed is like talking to an obligator,
Elend,
Tyndall said, her tone softening.
I think you handled this situation in the wrong way. However, Sazed does have a point. You were true to your own convictions, and that is a regal attribute, I think.
Yay, Sazed won the argument.
Yeah, he did. He made a good point. Ah,
And Tyndall heard it.
yeah, and regal is that's a regal attribute is what you want from monarchs. So,
Yeah.
hello. Yeah.
And what should I do now?
Whatever you wish. It was never my place to tell you what to do. I simply gave you knowledge of what men in your place did in the past.
And what would they have done? These great leaders of yours. How would they have reacted to my situation?
It is a meaningless question. They would not have found themselves in this situation, for they would not have lost their titles in the first place. Back to her being angry at him, like, "Thanks. Thanks,
Yep.
Tindwell, this is not useful. That was not useful."
Yeah, I mean, it's more like they would not have made the decisions you made because they weren't you. I think that,
Yes, is a better.
but yeah, but she is ideologically so focused on the title, which Ellen is about
Mhm,
to address.
mhm,
And I think that's what makes her wrong throughout
mhm.
some of this. Ellen says, is that what it's about then? The title?
Isn't that what we were discussing?
I also want to just add in here, I love that Tyndall has this blind spot. Maybe wrong isn't quite the right word, but it certainly seems a blind spot to me in this moment.
Mhm.
And it makes me like her as a character even more. It's almost like a little flaw.
It's good, yeah. It makes sense that she has this blind spot. It's not just her just being it is a flaw, but it's not just her being randomly flawed, you know?
Yeah, it's
To
consistent
add
with,
to it. Yeah, it's consistent with her character. That's why it's likable.
yeah.
Mhm.
Ellend didn't answer. What do you think makes a man a good king? He had once asked of Tyndwell. Trust, she had replied. A good king is one who is trusted by his people, and one who deserves that trust. Ellend stood up. Thank you, Tyndwell. Tyndwell frowned in confusion, then turned to Sazed. He looked up and met Ellen's eyes, cocking his head slightly. And I'm as quick as both Ellen and Sazed are here. I knew where this was going. Did you?
Yeah, yeah. In terms of what he was gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mhm. He's going to be the title.
Yeah.
It's not it doesn't matter whether he's got it formally.
Yeah. He's still going to be the good man that he is and help his people.
Mhm. And be trusted by his people and all of that. Exactly.
Yes. Then he smiled. Come, Tyndville. We should return to our studies. His Majesty has work to do, I think.
I love that.
His Majesty.
Yeah. So good. So good. His Majesty, and it's like So, because Saza gets it, that's what he's
Mm-hmm.
about to do, and he's still His Majesty. So maybe that is why we had in, say, my edition, Elend, and then at the bottom here we have. It still works when he says Lord Venture anyway.
Yeah.
He does still say Lady Vin and all of that, so it's actually weird that he did say Elend, but still, the change to His Majesty is so significant, and
Yeah.
just he has work to do. I think is like, okay, so we've done well, we've done all we can here.
Yeah.
Problem solved. He's gonna go and do stuff.
Cut that line for the trailer, yeah?
Yeah, there you go.
Tindwyl continued to frown as Elend left the room. His guards followed behind as he quickly strode down the hallway. I won't go back to the way I was. I won't continue to fret and worry. Tindwyl taught me better than that, even if she never really understood me. Elend arrived at his rooms a few moments later. He stalked directly in, then opened his closet. The clothing Tindwyl had chosen for him, the clothing of a king, waited inside.
Ah,
Great ending.
music swells, great ending. Yeah, honestly. I love, you know what? I love that he says, Tyndall taught me better than that, even if she didn't understand me. She didn't never really understood me. That's there's her blind spot, right? It's there, but it's had an effect anyway. That
Yeah,
her lack of agreement with him doesn't change anything. She still had such a good impact. Oh, I love it. Go
yeah,
Elend. I'm glad he had his. I don't think it's unrealistic for him to, you know, get inspired and get motivated and take steps forward.
agreed.
He moped enough. He honored his feelings and now he has to get his shit together.
Yeah, look, we're all allowed to have a couple of bad days and
Yeah.
setbacks. I've been hit
Mm.
by the depression stick more times than I care to count, but
Yeah.
life goes on, so you have to continue on, I
Hmm.
suppose.
Yeah.
Great chapter. Excited for
Great.
more.
Hmm.
Is there anything else to be said, Kitty?
Like the video.
If you like. And subscribe to that darn Kitty if you get a chance, because she's got a great channel. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Okay, thanks,
Okay,
bye.
thanks. Bye.